Hi, and welcome to the Power of Connection and Biz show. I'm Kimberly Lane, leadership coach, engagement building partner, best-selling author, and your host. Today, we have a guest who is a man on a mission. He is one of America's top high-performance men's coach, and his mission is to help ambitious men reclaim their personal power and find the quickest path to further success. What brought him to this passionate mission? As an entrepreneur, he himself endured the pain of burnout, addiction, and divorce as the gut-wrenching consequences of his neglect to his own mental health, self-awareness, and humility. Our guest has spent the last decade working with high-achieving leaders ranging from Fortune 500 brands, entrepreneurs, and celebrity influencers. He has spread his message with the likes of Walmart, Coca-Cola, BMW, and Disney, and will be hosting the upcoming Evolved Men podcast. Through his own self-focus and healing, he has found his own success and joy and is ecstatically married with 3 beautiful children living in Nashville, Tennessee. On a personal note, he loves all things human behavior, the Green Bay Packers, and that wonderful cheesy dish called nachos. Please welcome the founder of Evolve Men's Coaching, Angus Nelson. Angus, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Great to be here, Kimberly. That's such a crazy mouthful of stuff, isn't it?
Oh, it is. It is. But I've been dying to have this conversation because you obviously have a very, very unique niche. And I'm really wanting to kind of dive into the heart of the matter, if you will. And I'm going to kind of go back to when you were evolving, if you will. What was your initial disconnect in your personal journey that made you all of a sudden want to improve the connection you have with yourself and that self-awareness that obviously catapulted you into where you're serving now?
Yeah. Well, you kind of alluded to it, in the intro. My first business that I started years ago, I was 29 years of age, and I thought I was full of spit and vinegar and could take on the world. So much ego, so much narcissism, and was doing a cause that was a good thing. It was a nonprofit organization. It was arts driven, working with young adults, and we fronted as a coffee shop. We did over 500 concerts, a couple of music festivals, had over 15,000 kids come through our doors. Really amazing on the outside. However, internally, the business was struggling. One of those music festivals, we lost about $72,000 in one weekend. Wow. And I moved in the basement with my wife to, pay off all those bills and to, try and make good with everybody. Meanwhile, I didn't know how to ask for help. I didn't know how to, delegate. And so I felt it was incumbent on me to prove to my wife, to my family, to the board, to the community that I could turn the ship around. And under the pressure of that 60, 70, 80-hour work weeks, trying to do everything I could, I started to fall under that pressure and started making choices I otherwise wouldn't. It started with porn. And from porn, out of the guilt and the shame, I started drinking. And then I started drinking heavy. And then I started sleeping around. And in short order, I blew up my marriage, blew up my business, and blew up my self-worth. And I was suicidal. My divorce was on December 23rd, 2003, December 25th. I was sitting under my Christmas tree contemplating how to take my life. And I had a bit of a almost supernatural experience. I heard this voice that said, "We're not done here yet." And that was the beginning of a change. Like, I knew there had to be more. And over the next 3 years, I sought counseling. I thought anybody that goes to counseling has to be super crazy. And like the first session I had, I'm like, oh my gosh, I've always been crazy, and it's not that crazy. Like, we all need somebody outside ourselves to start hearing our stories. And as the words came out of my mouth, I'm like, that is some ridiculous thinking. And then I started reading, and I started watching videos and listening to audio stuff and attending events that were all on these elements of human behavior and psychology and personal development. And I became a changed man, and it wasn't something that happened overnight. I didn't have the tools to be able to get me there faster. And I didn't know how to invest in myself. I didn't know how to pay money for coaching or mentors or something that would advance me quicker. And so I kind of, funny, I was changing and yet I wasn't changing. I was changing in a way I was understanding, but I wasn't changing, and I was trying to do it by myself. and I was going to strong arm it. I was going to will it into existence. And that became more of my lessons. And I used to be at a place where I felt like I had to learn all my own lessons. And now I'm at a point in my life, I'm like, yeah, no, other people have gone before me. I'm going to pay them to learn the lessons so I don't have to. Far more expedited in a journey of growth. So I'll stop there because that's just the beginning of all of it.
No, some people are given massive struggles, like yourself, and you obviously have turned your pain into a purpose to serve others. And it is a journey. I'm sure you're still growing. I had a lot of personal trauma myself. That's why I'm kind of doing what I'm doing too. And to come to the other side of it finally, and it sounds like you found joy in love, found joy in your purpose, your podcast and the things you're doing. But I know it wasn't an easy journey. And especially when you felt like you had to be doing it alone, that is just not the answer. But I think we believe our pain is only to us, and we don't believe other people might have experienced something like that. And you obviously found that out later on down the road. And I'm sure you're trying to shorten that cycle for men as far as finding their own answers and finding their own correct journey, right?
Absolutely. And, everything seems normal in isolation. One of the things we don't understand is we were all born for community. Our ancestors, our generations before us had these communities where people had to depend on one another to exchange goods and services. And now, over the last 150, 200 years, we've kind of gotten to a place where we all kind of do our own thing. And we become even more isolated and alone. And now, I just have my device. I can just go to my device for everything that I want. I don't even actually have human interaction. I can have groceries dropped off at my front door instead of me having to actually exchange with somebody in the store. Like all these different things are helping to pull us apart from each other, but not helping us to actually become healthier.
That is a point. I am so adamant about it. We're slowly choosing to remove all human touch points in our life. And I think the pain in COVID was not having a choice about it anymore as far as being isolating. Before, we had a choice to say, we can go to the grocery store, I can have it all delivered. I can work out at the gym, or I can work out at my home gym.
Mm-hmm.
But then when COVID hit, we lost that choice. And I think that was really eye-opening for people to realize, we do need human connection. At the basis of our soul is a need for social communication, togetherness, and healing. And I think that I did a whole presentation and webinar on this whole point, that the other struggling thing for during the pandemic is, when 9/11 occurred, we had each other, we had community, we had church, we had family gatherings, we had candlelight vigils, we went to the site of the incident and we hugged each other and we cried together. But then during the pandemic, we couldn't heal because we're all separate and isolated from the very thing we need to heal, which is social community connection, right? Yeah. You hit it right on the head there.
Yeah. And
very much so.
With my guys, especially, our culture is, guys have a propensity already to kind of go inward.
Yep.
And they don't have the tools. And this is a gross exaggeration or generalization, but many men don't know how to articulate emotion and feelings, let alone actually have a context to why they're experiencing the things they're experiencing. And that's why I call what I do, evolve men. Is you're not broken, you're just not evolved. And there's a difference. Right. Is, our dads and our dads for sure didn't know how to give us the equipment that helps us to bring equity into the world, to deny some of the cultural norms where the patriarchal, existence that existed for so many years doesn't necessarily work anymore. All the context of toxic masculinity and power struggle that we find men needing and requiring validation through what they do instead of seeing that there's validation in who they are. Like all of these are massive shifts that men are not prepared for. And so we have two sides of the equation. We have women who desperately want to see men get healthy and whole. And then we have this other, of women who have been burned and ignored and silenced. Like there's these anger pieces that add even more pressure. So now the man's, in his quest to please and his quest for validation, is trying to say, well, where do I go? Like, how do I act? And who? There's so much confusion, and I'm trying to bring clarity to help men first and foremost understand themselves. Silence the noise, silence the pressure from everyone else, and find out first that you're enough, that you are worthy, you are deserving, and you have what it takes. And when a man can rise in his masculinity in a place where he has nothing to gain, nothing to prove, and nothing to lose, and he is full and enough in himself, suddenly the real strength of masculinity, of support, of leadership in a healthy fashion, where he doesn't have to be in charge, that he doesn't have to command, that he doesn't have to dominate. Like, only then is equity possible. Only then can people be around those kinds of men from a place of safety and connection. Like, that's the quest. That's the kind of men we want to create and we need desperately in this world. And so that's my mission.
Yeah, you've touched on a couple of points there that I want to kind of take us back to. Obviously society has generally categorized, men as, they're valued by what they do and how much they earn. And then not really too acceptable for a man to cry versus totally appropriate, supposedly, for a female to cry, right? That whole comparison, if you will, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think beautifully, though, just in the natural evolution of mankind and the things we're dealing with in leadership, and how leadership has to be more caring, be more vulnerable, be more empathetic, some of your softer skills that are traditionally assimilated to women, right? So, we've got the masculine and we've got the feminine, right? How do you approach with your clients? Because you kind of touched on this, men don't have to be totally masculine. There is a feminine side of them too. We, just like women have a masculine side of themselves, and sometimes we're too masculine in our doing, and we're neglecting that female portion. So how do you help your men who are isolating themselves, highly competitive because they feel they need to be that, especially if they're in a really big CEO leadership position, but struggling with the very things you're talking about, and afraid to ask for help, afraid to show their emotions, don't even probably know their emotions, build that more community with other men, as opposed to just competing with them. Kind of know where I'm going with this. Like, how do you help them accept their feminine side of themselves, which is such a necessary piece for them to actually connect with other human beings, men or women, and then also to feel more joyful for themselves?
So many angles in that question.
I know, it's a loaded one.
And I'll dial it in, because it all comes down to one thing, and that's identity. To your point, to me, masculinity and femininity don't have a gender. They don't have a gender.
Correct.
Right. And so even some of the things that you were just asking, you absolutely nailed it, is like understanding men's feminine, quote unquote, qualities are the things that allow us to have empathy and compassion and having an objectivity. Like, that's a thing that men are not altogether, again, generally speaking,
right,
are not altogether gifted and tooled for. But really, when you start to work with a man in the context of all these things, and this is both my favorite piece and my most aggravating piece, is because it's super hard for men to ask for help in and of itself. So marketing and like presenting to a man the work that I do sometimes can be difficult, because I have to really come at a surface level to begin with. Correct. Because of the level of safety a man needs to show his cards. And if I come in too hard, too fast, like, I can go deep, hardcore, just as I did introducing, myself and what I've been through. A guy would say, just be a dude, man, just back off. Like, you're freaking me out. Like, that is too much.
Yeah.
And somebody told me the other day, they said, like, men are like dogs. We need to kind of sniff each other's butts a little bit, like, are you safe? Are you who I think you are? We kind of, like, sort each other out. So number one is I have to approach them from that level. But this identity thing, the favorite part I have of it, number one is, again, this tension between I love this and I hate it, is like, for a man to see himself in a quotient of being enough, being worthy, being deserving, that in and of itself is like the core level I try to get men to. And so you have to reverse engineer and disconnect all of the needs for, that validation. Typically my clients are these high performer, high achieving type dudes. On an Enneagram, if you're familiar with the Enneagram, it's similar to like Myers-Briggs, DISC profile, et cetera. The Enneagram speaks to emotional levels for two major things I depend on in my communication with men. One is fear and one is motivation. And when you know a person's fear and motivation, you know how to communicate them in a way that helps them move forward faster. And so I have all my guys go through the Enneagram to start so I can give them a baseline, like what is fueling you? You're doing this because XYZ. And most of my men, not all of them, but most of them fall in a 1, a 3, or an 8. And if you're not familiar with the Enneagram, you should check it out. And there's wings on each one.
I need to check that out for sure.
Yeah. And so 1s, 3s, and 8s are like really driven individuals, but for different reasons, different motivations. And so I help the men to kind of see that lens first and foremost, and then what's that next higher level self that you need to get to? And I take my men through what I call the manhood matrix. It's an alignment tool that I've designed that stacks 7 layers of how we see ourselves and how they're interrelated. Very similar to how Maslow did with his pyramid of self-actualization. And at the core of it is mindset. That's the main foundation, is how you see you. And that's the thing I work with men right from the get-go in the first 30 days is absolute indoctrination to help see themselves through a different lens, no longer contextualizing their understanding of self by their performance, but instead coming to this place of saying over themselves, whether through, some sort of meditation or a visualization or a affirmation, is creating, practicing, and rehearsing the emotional connection to this next higher level self. And psychology says that when you use this power of imagination to see yourself in a certain way, in the same way you would see an actor, a singer, an athlete close their eyes and see themselves performing at their highest, they're telling their brain, this is how I'm going to perform. And in that visualization process, science says your brain can't tell the difference between what you actually do and what you imagine to do. So what I do with my men is to have them practice that, to see themselves in this next level higher state. And what does it feel like in that state? Like connect to that emotion, pride, joy, fulfillment, satisfaction. Because at the end of the day, the things that we're doing, to your point, seeking money, seeking cars, seeking power, ... I said that the thing you think you want is not the thing you're actually wanting. To you, that represents something else. It represents happiness, fulfillment, satisfaction. So what if we bypass that? Instead of you needing to get to that attainment to where you have the car, have the 2.5 kids, have the white picket fence, like instead of waiting till then to see or feel that thing, what if you just start rehearsing it now? And suddenly there's this new power that the things I was questing after to fill a deficit, a need, and a lack no longer have its power. Because the fulfillment, the satisfaction, and the happiness I'm experiencing today now puts me in a place of abundance, supply, and source. And so today actually becomes the only day actually yours. That's the acronym. And so now what I do today actually fuels momentum for tomorrow. So instead of me always trying to pursue what's before me, I just pursue and pay attention to what's here today. Suddenly I'm in a place of self-awareness, emotional intelligence. I'm present. I'm engaged. As a leader, I'm more connected with my team. As a partner, I'm more connected with my partner. As a father, I'm more connected with my kids. Like all the game changes when we get to that identity and then connecting people with this next level self of seeing them and experiencing that person. So that's kind of like, it gets really deep, and I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible.
But it's the same thing. I just love, I love all this stuff. It's just so, but I really want to reinforce what piece that you talked about, that manhood matrix and the whole mindset piece of it
Mhm.
is, you talked about they feel it once they get that car, that job, that house, that girl, whatever, I am all of a sudden going to feel as confident or the man I should be. And my
Mhm.
world is wonderful, that joyful happiness. And invariably, you've heard so many stories, they get there and they still don't have the feeling, right? So, but
Mhm.
I really want to focus on it. It's the feeling of that feeling, the feeling of how do you feel, you think you're going to feel when you get that promotion or you have that family. It's that feeling you start feeling now. It's not just imagining the consequence or imagining the scenario. It's actually all the feeling that goes around with that really helps manifest it in
Mhm.
your world today, right? I think it's
Yes.
just so beautiful. And I also want to touch on something. I do a lot on mindset for women. From past sexual abuse, unhealthy
Mhm.
relationships, eating disorders, things of that sort. So to me, it's always rewriting those mindset tapes, rewriting those tapes to the affirmations you spoke of, right? And in psychology, the biggest thing commonly we all feel, the most common feeling for all of us humans is we're not deserving or we are not good enough, right? And so
Mhm.
I find it, having not being a man, and I don't usually coach men, although I can, but it's interesting that men feel exactly the way a lot of women feel. We walk around
Mhm.
feeling we're not deserving of love, we're not good enough, but that's just a common, as much as we think it's because of what we've been through, it's just no matter who you are, that's a common psychological feeling is we're not enough, right? And
Mhm.
hence goes all those addictions and all the other things that go with it in order to fill that void you just talked about. um we're getting close to the end of our conversation, but a couple of things I still want
Already?
to. No,
What?
I know.
Got
I want to
so
get to
much
more.
to do.
I know we have a lot to go for. So tell me a little bit about. We talked a little bit about how men get there, and a little bit what your methodology is. I love that manhood matrix. Um, what when they're moving and evolving and getting more towards the area they want to be, and you've helped them get there. What is that mindset of success and the number one killer as a result?
Well, you know this as a coach, like
Yeah.
fear of failure is like
Yeah.
what so many people, imposter syndrome, we'll give it some different labels, but truly, the killer of our success, first of all, the mindset of success is not about the doing, right? It's about the being. It's connecting to your source and supply. And so this is kind of the things we've already been talking about, the work that I do in this manhood matrix as we stack that deck. And just to give you kind of your listeners just a brief flyby, there's your mindset. On top of your mindset, you address an attitude, and this is all built off an acronym of manhood. And that attitude is like a philosophy of life, that life is happening for you, not to you,
Correct.
that you're coming
Correct.
from a place of abundance, not from lack. And then you stack onto that your nature. Your nature is not in what you do, it's about who you are. Now we're addressing that identity. Then we stack onto that humility. Let's remove the ego and all the things that you're trying to pursue to fill your ego, and instead see your gifts, talents, and skills in a place of contribution, that you're here to serve the world in some form or fashion. Now we step into observation, where we become self-aware, emotionally intelligent, and we understand that the way we carry ourselves has ramifications in the people around us. And oftentimes our chaos we're building is not because of the people around us, but rather who we are has attracted and propelled, or in some way endorsed the behaviors around us. And then we move into this the second to last piece, which is the opportunities, those gifts, talents, and skills having a place to play in the world. And you start to see kind of serendipity, and energetically you attract or create these elements around you until you'll finally dare. You'll dare to do the things that scare the spit out of you. And I don't mean that from like you're scared, like, oh my God. I mean, on a daily basis, a weekly basis, a monthly basis. The dare is not an ultimate purpose. The dare is when you get challenged to something that questions you about how you see you already, and calling you up to see yourself as something else. That's what brings us to this fear of failure. Most people don't dare because they feel on some level like, what if? What if I fail? What if
Mhm.
I get screwed over? What if I make a mistake? Well, let's go back down this lens, of this alignment tool, the manhood matrix. What you're questioning is your ego or your identity, or your attitude, or maybe it's your mindset. Like all those coming up. How do we rebuild to get past this dare? Well, let's tell ourselves a new story. Let's
Exactly.
rebuild a new understanding. And all of it stacks again on top of one another until you're in a place where you'll dare, because Joseph Campbell said this: in the cave you fear to enter lies the treasure that you seek.
Bingo.
The very
Exactly.
thing you're afraid of is the thing that will set you free. So what you're afraid of is not failure. That's a bad story. What you're actually afraid of is success. You don't think you can become the man or woman that you know you need to become in order to achieve what you see in your heart to achieve. And so when we feel that fear, it's really not a calling out, it's a calling up.
No, I love that. It's like you're the best version of yourself, and your true purpose and fulfillment and joy in your life is when you get through that fear to the other side of it and do whatever it takes to make that happen. You're exactly right. It's not fear of failure. It's fear of becoming exactly who you're supposed to be and all the beautiful things that come with it. The abundance, the prosperity, the serving, the purpose, the joy,
Why are we so
loving.
afraid of our own light?
I know. I
You know,
know. Exactly.
we think we
Yeah.
have to be meek. We think we have to be, and here's, don't get me wrong, like to embrace your greatness is not to be a douchebag. To embrace your greatness means that you light, so you give permission to others to light too. And I say that on both equations. When you walk in your greatness from this stack in this alignment tool, people aren't questioning your narcissism or your ego or you're a douchebag. They see you as authentic and real and connected, vulnerable. You're approachable. And that's when you become powerful. Nothing to gain, nothing to prove, and nothing to lose. You have a mission. Instead of stepping out on the dare and feeling like people are going to see you as a target and criticize you and tear you down, instead, there's a whole legion of people who are so excited to see you succeed, because that's that guy right there. Like, he's the real deal. How can I help? Can I make any introductions? Who do you need to know? Can I work for you? Can I help you? This is what we don't understand, is that our energetic selves have to slide out of what we currently exist in the matrix that we live, to see that there's a higher way, a much higher way.
Yep. I also, when a lot of people are afraid to share their personal stories, kind of like what we've shared here, it's really that story that is the most relatable part of yourself, right? Your vulnerability is really the most relatable part of you that makes you human, and why people want to talk to you or work with you or be with you, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just it's
When
it's
when guys hear my story, they're like, me too. Oh my God,
exactly.
I
Yeah.
struggle with that.
Yeah. So you're doing something really brilliant. And I definitely, because of how society defines men or male success, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And just, I don't think it's as, they're not as willing, as you said, to ask for help. I think what you're doing is just truly amazing. Anything else you'd like to share with our audience? I know we talked a little bit about the Manhood Matrix. I know you can find the manhoodmatrix.com. I'm assuming that's your website.
Yeah, well, you can go to angusnelson.com is my website. And then I actually have kind of, we were just talking about, what is the stair step to get you there.
Yes.
And so as I put my camera back in focus, I don't know what just happened. I got super fuzzy. I'm like, my glasses, I just got a new prescription. There are 7 life-changing questions that every powerful man asks. And I went through the manhood matrix and I dissected these 7 questions to say, how do I prime a man to ask himself the hard questions? And you're either going to do one of 2 things. You're going to chicken out. And I'm like, I can't answer those questions. And just as a teaser, the first question is super simple and yet super complex. And I base it off of the oracles of the UK called the Spice Girls. What do you want? Tell me what you want, what you really, really want. And that's the first question that just starts the whole series of questions. And you can find it at themanhoodmatrix.com. And the series of those 7 questions will open you up into seeing things you can't unsee, and getting really honest about what matters to you and what you're currently doing in your life. If it's not aligning to that, that's the incongruence that's frustrating you. That's why you're frustrated, hitting walls, feeling stuck, all those different emotional responses are as a result of you not being in alignment to what truly is you. And
Yep.
so these 7 questions are to prime that. And then afterwards, after you finish these questions, I actually have a masterclass that takes you through all 7 of those questions and how they apply to your life and what to do about it.
That just sounds fascinating. I'm just really applaud your work. Anything else you'd like to leave our audience with? Final thought.
2 things. You are not alone and you are enough. No matter where you're at, what you're contending with, what your challenges or trauma of your past, never let that define you. 2 people grow up under an alcoholic father. One says, I am the successful businessman I have become because of my dad. The other one is in jail and says, I am who I am because of my dad. Both came from the same place, but both chose different paths. That is the power you have, that you possess. Never let your story define you. Let it refine you.
No, I think that's beautiful. You're exactly right. Yes. It has happened for you. It has helped you be the person you are and help you achieve the levels you have. It's not despite, but just like it has empowered you to be. That's been your purpose. So remember, yes, you are not alone and you are enough. From the man who is passionate about high performance men's coaching. Thank you so much, Angus, for being on the show. I just have been really excited and wanting to hear what you have to say, because I think we are similar in our missions and our messaging, but obviously tailored to specific genders. But, deep down inside, we all have feelings of we're the only one and we're not enough. So you can find all of Angus's information in the show notes. Thank you, listeners, for joining us today on the Power of Connection and Biz show. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Power of Connection and Biz. Thank you for all your reviews. Good to hear from you. And remember, connections change everything. Bye for now.